Hi everyone, this is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Live. And today, as usual, once a month we do a talk with City Manager Brian Johnson. Hey Brian, thanks for joining me.
Rico, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's always good. It's doing this once a month. Although I call this Prime Lunchtime with City Manager. We're not having lunch, but it's during the lunchtime. So I appreciate you giving that hour up all the time that we
Sure.
do this. But before we get into it and some of the discussions of what's going on, I just want to introduce our sponsors. We actually have two, beginning with this episode. One is our lead sponsor of EV Remodeling, Eli, who owns it and lives here in Peachtree Corners, has been a great supporter of ours. It's going on our second year. EV Remodeling does a lot of the renovation work from start to finish. You can find their work both in an article we did online at our website, livinginpeachtreecorners.com, or go visit evremodelinginc.com. Eli's a great guy, great family, does some really good work, so check them out. New sponsor beginning this month is Clearwave Fiber. Um, they're here in Peachtree Corners. They were actually an elite sponsor of the Criterium Road Race that we just had with Curiosity Lab. They've 100% fiber, 100%. They'll take care of your business and your home. So you should check them out. It's Clear Wave Fiber, and we appreciate them being part of our corporate sponsor family. So thank you for doing that. So Brian, um, I guess the first thing that we should talk about and get out of the way is something that's hit, even though we're so local in such a small town in the scheme of things. Peachtree Corners has been like all of a sudden I find our name on the New York Post, the UK Mail, and a lot of it has to really do not with us as a city, but with Lululemon, which is a store that is in the Forum. It's a nationally known brand. My daughter buys from there too. I mean, it's a great brand. But things happened just a week or two ago, caught on video, and that maybe was made public. That it's not unusual that it hasn't happened in other places. But we've hit the map because of that. So you want to tell us a little bit about that, and we're gonna have a discussion about it.
Well, you're right. What we did is we kind of got caught in the middle of what is a national phenomenon, it appears, and that is there have been some corporations like Lululemon, there are a number of other ones that have adopted a policy that affects their response to shoplifting or theft of any kind of merchandise from their stores.
Yeah.
And the policy regulates the employees' behavior during and after, and it's kind of twofold. One is policies are generally that if they're witnessing a shoplifting or a theft in progress, is
Mm.
to not intervene directly, is to not engage directly the individual or individuals doing it. And that one is when you read the articles and some of the studies on this stuff, that's generally for the safety of the employees. You don't know what the person stealing merchandise will do. If they have a
Right.
weapon, are they going to assault you? So they're just generally like, look, do not engage them, do not get near enough them or interfere with what they're doing, let them leave. And then some of the big brands have in-house, you know,
Security or
yeah, security that they'll investigate and see if they'll do. So that's kind of one part of this. The other part that maybe has people more like, kind of having a difficult time understanding is the don't call the police
mm.
during and in some cases even afterwards, that they're just going to write it off as lost merchandise. And the
Right.
purpose behind that, in the cases where a corporation does have the policy, is there has been some internal cost benefit analysis that they think that there is a greater risk to the corporation of calling the police and potentially being accused of profiling
Mm.
than just writing off the loss of the merchandise. And so they're like, we're not going to call the police about this at all because there could be instances. And of course, with corporate policies, it's a blanket across the country. So there certainly could be instances where it wouldn't, it clearly wouldn't be necessarily that, but they're just worried that there could be instances where some employee makes, if you want to call it, levels an accusation against somebody to the police even after the fact, and that
Hmm.
person maybe, invariably either wasn't involved or they level an accusation against a corporation that you're only accusing me because you're profiling me for certain reasons. And so they've said, we're not going to call the police.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, why that affects us is these we have stores here that are part of national and international corporations, and some have this policy. And the forum certainly has stores that are struggling with the nationwide. And I
Hmm.
stress the nationwide phenomenon because, some of the discussion around here is like, oh, it's crime you know, has decided to focus on the forum or focus on Peachtree Corners. And that is not the case. It's unfortunately we have any, but we
Mm.
do, we are no different than other locations that are struggling with the fact that certain, you know, criminal elements, juveniles, just certain people who are willing to break the law
Hmm.
know that they can get away with it to a certain degree on certain stores that have this policy. And in the case of Lululemon, there was an instance where having this policy in place, there were individuals who, it appears in the view of, Lululemon's, leadership, did not remove themselves from the, the case of this theft,
Right. Well,
and
they
as
actually,
a result,
yeah.
got terminated.
Yeah.
And then the termination resulted in the spouse of one of the individuals posting a long, kind of blog about it. And it was it started with, the two employees were fired
Hmm.
because they called the police, which Lululemon's come back and said that wasn't the case. They were fired because of other policies, which appears to be they did not remove themselves from the
Right.
immediate area of these people. But
Yeah.
it got picked up nationally because people were like, wait a second, you got, fired because you called the police. And then it kind of got what, but anyway, as this story took off, it starts always with there was an incident in Peachtree Corners, Georgia at Lululemon,
Right.
and then it goes into the corporate policy and how this is, you know,
Right.
how this has contributed to some of the, increase in criminal activity we see, at least when it comes to the shoplifting and theft. So that's the incident. We could certainly talk about, the specific case here, but that's why we were, or have been
So,
in the news.
so the ladies that followed them out, if the reports are to be, if the reports are accurate, right? The posting, I'm sure, listen, there's three sides to the story, so accuracy can be depending
Yeah.
on where it goes. I've read enough articles on this because this has appeared in like sites like the New York Post, UK Mail. I mean, it's been internationally even reported to a degree because of Lululemon's brand, right? Um, if they hadn't followed them out, which they shouldn't have, I guess I can appreciate and understand the liabilities of a business where they want to make sure their employees are safe. But also it's a cost factor too, right? It's not good to have your employees go out because lawsuits can arise from some of these things, for sure. Because lawsuits are like we're a society where we like to sue everyone.
We're
Um,
litigious, no doubt
yes,
about that.
yes, yes. So, I mean, but if they didn't follow them out, they didn't see the car marking or the car, the make and model and all that, these guys would never have been arrested in Peachtree City, where they went, I guess it was the next day, to do the same thing at another Lululemon. And they were arrested, and now they're in jail, or at least they were in jail, because the aggregate amount of what they stole was a felony range versus a misdemeanor range, if the reporting is accurate, right? Right?
That,
Because they
that
wouldn't.
that's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. At some point, they may have been caught, but the make and model of the vehicle was a result of the theft at the Forum location of Lululemon, and that did play into the very next day. This same group of four went
Right.
down to Peachtree City, south of Atlanta, and did the same thing. And the police, having the make and model, knew what to look for when they tried to leave the. I guess it was a almost like a shopping mall, and so there were multiple exits, and they were
Yeah.
able to keep them from leaving. And they had already changed their license plate, so that would not have helped if we had
Right.
picked that up here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, now it's also important to note a couple other things. One is there are a number of other corporate policies that have affected this kind of activity, both at the forum and elsewhere. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
have you talked to North American Properties, who owns the forum, and Avalon? Avalon has stores that this same thing is happening. Avenues at East Cobb, other locations they have. When
Right.
there are others. Um, my understanding is Victoria's Secret, who has a similar policy, has more theft on a somewhat unfortunate regular basis than even Lululemon.
Yeah.
Um, and
Unbelievable.
so they're not the only ones. Again, we got caught with individuals who, you know, understand we're kind of tired of having to see this. And it was
Yeah.
brazen. If you watch the video, I mean,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
getting brazen about this. But, nationally, it's on the increase. In fact, there are some cities, usually big cities, who won't even prosecute misdemeanors at all. And so,
Yes. Right.
those who do this know that if you keep the value of the merchandise that you're shoplifting, you're stealing
Mm-hmm.
below a certain threshold, then
That's right.
there's essentially no consequences to your action, and these stores are just writing it off. I don't think most of what we've read, most of the comments that we've received are not the incredulous, reaction has not been about, well, they got fired, or the belief that they got fired for not removing themselves from the immediate location of all these people
Mm-hmm.
doing it. It was, a lot of people believe, oh, they got fired for calling the police. That's
Right,
kind of
because that was part of that commentary. But I mean, even still, I guess that I think what this probably shows, or what's necessary, maybe at some point, is that the forum, unlike town center, has no cameras there, and that may be something that they maybe have to look into.
well.
Um,
There's two things going on at the forum that the city, we've scheduled some meetings with some of the entities that can do some things to help. But right now, on the exterior roads that you drive on to get to these stores at the forum, the main boulevard, there
mhm.
are not specific exterior cameras on the parking spots and the roadway. And so, that's going to be discussed. The other issue that it's going to be harder is, Gwinnett PD, when they were finally called after this incident, they had, I
Mhm.
can't remember, it was either 4 or 5 officers that got there within 2 minutes.
Well,
But it was all done already. The
yeah,
group of four had left. And Gwinnett PD has implored, these locations, call us. We can't do anything if you don't call us.
Hmm.
But the corporate policy of, hey, we don't call the police because we would rather write it off than get accused of profiling, which usually is, tends to be the racial profiling. There's other types, but the risk some corporations feel that is greater than calling the police is such that Gwinnett, police department is very frustrated as well
Oh
because they're
yeah.
like, this is happening right under our nose, and we are here. We had officers in the area, could have done something. You called. I don't know how to fix that per se, but we
Hmm.
certainly can do some things and will do some things to maybe increase our ability to, ultimately solve and prosecute some of this criminality. It's important to note that our camera system, city's camera system, both video and flock, tied in with Fusus, is unequivocally the reason why police were able to identify and ultimately apprehend the last two homicide instances we had here, which, you know, unfortunate, but at least we had the ability to do that. So we know it works. We want to have as much of it as we can. So we'll do our part, but unfortunately, there's going to
Right.
be still a struggle with corporate policy on an individual store basis
Right.
on what they do with what's happening inside.
Yeah, and I know it's frustrating apparently for the forum also because they've had
It
discussions
is.
with the businesses, and it's out of their control as far as that goes.
And
So
they've
yeah.
also implored, I'm glad you brought that up. It's not just Gwinnett
Hmm.
PD, it's the landlord. North
Yeah.
American Properties has been like, please, this hurts us all when this happens,
Right.
because some of the local community social media comments, like on Nextdoor, there's people who are like, why isn't the forum doing more? Or, you should reach out to the city. The city shouldn't let
Hmm.
this happen. Well, we would love to be able to get these stores to do something about it. But if,
Yeah.
and then these employees feel handcuffed too. So,
Yeah.
we'll, hopefully if we get enough of this solved, or the word gets out that, you really are under surveillance when you're out on the public
Hmm.
right of way, the public spaces, that maybe, the criminal element won't come here, but it is not exclusive to us. Nobody wants it to happen. And look, as frustrating as these policies are, the other thing we got to be careful of is, I read a lot of, I'm never shopping at Lululemon again. And
Yeah, I saw that
I
too.
get the stance, but if we're not careful, we are going to end up, by taking a stance there, driving Lululemon away from this particular location, and now we've
Mm.
got another empty storefront.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
understood. I mean, these types of things actually have driven companies to actually close. I mean, Walmart has closed in places. Other stores
yes,
have closed in neighborhoods where these things are happening. Um, you know,
yeah,
I
these
don't think
decisions
it.
are being made at their corporate headquarters, and
Yeah.
again, there's greater forces at play and other social, considerations that they put
Right.
into it, right or wrong, whether you agree or not. It's just, what we'd hate to see is, the end of the day, this location is closed because it's not getting enough sales. And again, now you got an empty
Yeah.
storefront. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't think that certainly would be the case. So hopefully things will be a little different. But um, all right. So why don't we I mean, there's other things happening in the city. There's certainly governments and companies that are flocking to the city of Peachtree Corners for a lot of different reasons. Curiosity Lab is one of them. To be able to do like that race that you all put together between the city and the Curiosity Lab with the Criterium Road race, that was just phenomenal to be able to do that. And now we have, and we've, over the past year or so, the French American Business Chamber relocated here. Several companies like Valmat, which is, I think, a Danish company, relocated into
yep.
Peachtree Corners. Um, there are companies that are
Just
just like,
executed a partnership agreement with Audi.
Audi, that's
We
right. There
have
you
no
go.
idea that may materialize into something more. I mean, that's the purpose of all of this is Curiosity Lab is merely a magnet
Mm-hmm.
to get companies here. Our hope is once Curiosity Lab gets them to the area and they're using Curiosity Lab or they're collaborating or doing whatever, is we talk to them and convince them, hey, look at this community as a whole. This is a great place for maybe you to expand your business
Yeah.
or, do certain things. I just got done meeting with the supply chain leadership at Intuitive Surgical at their headquarters in Sunnyvale.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of it was to get the list of all of their tier one and tier two parts suppliers that they purchase parts from to assemble the Da Vinci, robotic
Right.
assisted surgical suite.
Right.
And the purpose of us getting that is we're going to go to then those part suppliers and
Uh-huh.
say, hey, wouldn't it be great for you to have a location really close to one of your biggest customers? Wouldn't it be great? And if so, let's talk about how much square footage you need and what can the city do to. So that's how
Yeah.
we're using this. And then of course we know that Curiosity Lab was ultimately a just decisive point in Intuitive's decision to come here. So it's
Right.
a means to an end. But yeah, I mean it continues to play out.
I'm
We
glad you, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about the list of suppliers and stuff because I don't think people understand what a city does as far as economic impact and bringing businesses here and what's involved. It really is a salesmanship type of thing, and to be able to
Oh,
show that we,
absolutely.
right? I mean, you're traveling. In fact, weren't you all in Israel recently? And now there's an Israeli government um, related business organization that's going to be working out of Peachtree Corners. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
So the CTO of the city, the person who really runs Curiosity Lab day to day, he went to Israel, spoke at it by invitation, spoke at a conference, but he was able to close a partnership agreement that we had kind of laid the groundwork for last year when I was there. And
Hmm.
that's with an Israeli governmental agency called the Israeli Innovation Authority. And their job is to foster, incubate, and help develop Israeli startup companies and their expansion into the international market. And we've worked out a partnership agreement in which they're going to vet this big pool of startups within the nation of Israel,
Hmm.
vet them down to ones that they think are ready to come to the US, meaning, their product they think is one that'll work. They're financially, healthy enough that they can scale somewhere else. And then they're going to push them to the US through Curiosity Lab. We're going to offer some assistance when they land here,
Hmm.
um, somewhat similar to what the French American Chamber does for French companies. Is they get here and then they're kind of like, all right, I'm in the US, talk to me about what it would take for us to hire people here. Is there certain paperwork we got
Right.
to do? We want to be close to certain things. Where's the good market to do that? And sometimes we keep them here. Sometimes they leave and go elsewhere in Metro
Hmm.
Atlanta, elsewhere in Georgia, elsewhere in the US. But at
Yeah.
least we had a shot at saying, maybe we can meet your need. Maybe you stay here within our corporate limits and you don't leave, on your expansion. But we've executed an official, partnership agreement to have that pipeline get created between, the Israeli
Yeah.
government and, Israeli startups coming to the U.S. So it's great opportunity for us to maybe land some, companies that have product and maybe they want to expand and stay right
Mhm.
here inside
It's
our city.
amazing. So, Israel, the startup nation. I think there was a book about that, about how they have more startups per capita than any other nation. And they're
They do.
small, right? Unbelievable. Um, so things are still moving along with technology, obviously here, but we're also looking at the city as a whole being community driven, right? I mean, there's stuff going on like just recently. One of my friends texted me from it was Saturday night. It was a concert night. I think it was the Michael Jackson
Yep. Tribute. Yep.
tribute, right? He said there were more people there than he's ever seen since the park opened, since Town Center opened. Now I don't know what the numbers could be.
Oh,
It's a
we
subject.
probably exceeded 5,000 at the Town
Did?
Green. I think that Queen concert that we had, what, 2 years, like the summer before COVID,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
probably bigger, but yeah, we exceeded 5,000 out on the Town Green. I
Right.
mean, it was well attended. It was a
Sounds.
gorgeous day. In fact, unfortunately, actually, the end people were needing to leave because they didn't dress properly because it got a little bit chilly at the when the
Yeah.
sun went because
Crazy.
it was a gorgeous day.
Crazy weather. It goes from 42 to like 79, and it's just like unbelievable. It's like
Yeah,
Northern California almost. That
yeah.
must be that cooling effect or El Nino. I forget which one it is now. But the concert series is going great. A lot of stuff going on there. We're going to have the Peachtree Corners Festival again at Town Center. I think that's in September.
Yeah.
Um, but when all that's done, I think part of what the city wants to do at this point is because the green, the inner circle of that oval, has had so much traffic and bumpy areas in it and stuff. The city's going to take that down by 2 feet.
Yeah, so look, we created the town green specifically to be a gathering spot, a community amenity where people want to go to. And we've done what cities will typically do to foster that. We have a concert series that brings people there,
Right.
provides entertainment and opportunities for us in the community to see each other and to socialize. The playground is a great amenity out there. The fitness trail, so on and so forth. But the downside to that comes with things like we got to spend more money cleaning it up because there's more people. Our custodial work out there, has increased exponentially. The off-duty police protection has increased. Trying to get kids off the playgrounds, late at night when it's closing at 11. I mean, those are
Right.
good problems to have because a lot of people want to go out there. But one of the things that unfortunately, we're going to have to do to make sure that it looks the best is we've got a big 2-acre oval and that has a ring of sidewalk around it, and inside it's got all this grass. Well, the original soil that the sod was planted on top of is your typical Georgia clay.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is when it gets wet and you have a lot of weight on it, like whether it was 2 years ago, the festival it was rain. The first year out there, it rained. It was kind of a mess. We've had some
Hmm.
concerts where it's wet. So you
Yeah.
get weight on it, and when the clay gets wet, it gets squishy. And so it squishes down and it gets uneven. And then when it dries, it gets hard. But it then hardens with all the waves and undulation of all the weight. So
Right.
one thing you've got is it started to get lumpy. And the other thing is clay doesn't necessarily always facilitate grass growing.
Hmm.
So we known that there was a risk that we had to do this. But anyway, at the day after the last concert, we got a project. We're going to come in and we're going to remove the sod and about 2 feet of all the soil and the clay. Then we're going to put in a drainage bed for it to drain the
Hmm.
water better. We're going to put in good, soil, and then we're going to attempt, because we prefer grass over artificial, but we're going to attempt to
Hmm.
put sod back and go one more year next year and see if we can't, if there's enough gaps between when you have large groups of people on it, that the grass will grow well, and hopefully that's the case. If not, we'll ultimately go to turf. But either way, we've got to improve the drainage, so that will happen right after the last concert. We're also the original locations of the three first, call it playground equipment, where you have two climbing things and then you have that hill with the
Right.
slide.
Right. The little
That
tent.
whole area is going to become a tot area, meaning playground equipment specifically for kids that are like 4 years and under. So much, lower, easier, safer type of
Right.
playground stuff. So that'll be kind of the tot area. Then if you want to consider the area where the Qantas and all the big stuff is kind of the intermediate. And then if you,
Hmm.
are feeling froggy, you can go over to the fitness trail and do some things there. Now,
Right.
we're going
Right.
to have to make some improvements to the fitness trail as well. For us to insure it, we're going to have to put a fence around that area. And, there's going to have to be some signage out there restricting it to people of a certain age or ability.
Oh well. Okay.
As oftentimes,
Isn't there insurance on there already? I thought.
well,
I
there
thought.
is, but what's happening is the insurance company saying, look, you just opened up all this new playground equipment that is
Uh-huh.
attracting a lot more people. Well, those kids, especially there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
unsupervised kids there, they then turn around and right there is this other stuff and they want to go and do it.
Right.
And they're not either capable or old enough or under supervision. And so we're going to have to, it'll stay there. We'll make it'll still look unique. We're kind of coming up with ideas on way to,
Right.
how to do that, but that's coming. And then we're not the redoing the sod, and the tot lot will start the day after the last concert. So we don't interfere with any
Sure.
of that. It'll be the fall.
Uh-huh.
But here in maybe within a month, we're going to start construction of the dog park.
Now, where
That,
is that going to be in relation to stuff?
so if you're standing on the town green staring at the stage,
Yeah.
it'll be to the left of
Okay.
Cinebistro in the woods. It'll be almost alongside of Cinebistro as you're staring, or if you want to
Okay.
consider it the back of Cinebistro, if you're
Right.
going in Cinebistro's front door, but it'll
There's a
be
there's a
there.
walkway that winds out to
Correct.
the yeah
That'll be
the
where the
Peachtree
dog
Corners.
park. It's a little bit farther back. Probably the best way to get to the dog park is going to be to drive your car to the side surface parking lot for
Hmm.
Cinebistro.
Okay.
That'll be the best way to enter it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have a dog park, a pretty big dog park. Some of it'll have two areas, one for bigger dogs, one for smaller ones. And then
Right.
within each of those areas, there'll be some artificial turf and some natural area
Right.
with certain little things for the dog. And then
Okay.
seating area that are covered for the dog owners to, and then we're exploring putting in some sort of call it a permanent stand, if you will, but it may be almost like operate like a bar or a beverage area where once you
Uh-huh.
go inside the fenced area of the dog park, you could go up to this area and get a drink.
Oh, okay. That sounds cool.
So,
All right. That's probably one of the local businesses already, or maybe another business would be there
if we
doing
did it,
that, I
we'd
guess.
probably bid it out
Okay.
and see who wants to, to run it.
Sure. Would
We're,
it?
I, we're
Yeah.
certainly not going to. I'm not going to be
Yes.
pouring, mixing drinks or anything like that. But
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
A
there's some good
lemonade stand.
examples around here. Buckhead has a dog park that's wildly successful, and they have a little mini bar that
Really
operates certain hours so that the dog owners go there, and while they're watching
interesting.
their dog and socializing, they can get a
Well, that's
drink. So
cool.
yeah, this gathering, this is why we created it. It's a gathering space, and
Yeah.
hopefully some of this activity bleeds over into the forum. The forum started their phase one of
Yes.
removing
Yeah.
parking spots and putting in more outdoor seating and outdoor amenity space. So they're moving forward with their stuff. So a lot going on in that area because
Yeah.
that's our downtown, and we want to make sure we support it.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of activity and even more stuff that's going to be coming along that we'll be talking about in further podcasts. Like once the feasibility study has been finished with the pickleball study,
Oh yeah.
and a bunch of other things also that's happening, like the comprehensive plan, because that comes to a head at some point. Actually, when does the final report get put out?
August or September, one of the two.
Okay, okay. So we'll be covering that as well, and talking about that on these podcasts. So we've come to the end of our time, I think, Brian, and don't want to monopolize all your time.
Well,
Uh,
thank you.
do appreciate you being out with us and talk to us about these things. It's good to get clarity, and thank you for your input and the city's point of view on Lululemon and the things going on, as well as the stuff coming up. I mean, all exciting things. So check out, our listeners here, check out livinginpeachtree.com for a little bit more on what's going on in the city. And our latest issue is out. It's actually out at locations like Ingles and um, Dunkin' Donuts, Dunkin', it's called now, and a bunch of other places. It's going to hit the mailbox in a few days. So check it out. There's a lot of stuff on it. And summer reading recommendations is the cover story. So see what your neighbors are recommending as far as what's a good read this summer. And check that out. Hang in there with me as I close out. Thank you again for our lead sponsor, EV Remodeling, for being a sponsor of this, and for Clearwave Fiber for joining us as a new sponsor and a great supporter of ours for this